Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to invite up to the stage with me Linda Boff, George Hammer, Gail Troberman, Tammy Hinault, and Keith Reinhardt. So with a panel like this, my job is going to be incredibly easy. My goal is not to talk at all, so we'll give that a shot. No, thank you all so much for joining me. I'm honored to be up here with these individuals who are such icons in the industry. Y'all are, to say you're marketing masterminds is an understatement. So yes, pictures please, capture this. This is a good one. I have my phone here so we can get one more selfie up here at the end. Jenny Rooney, I'm the Chief Brand and Community Officer at Adweek, and we are thrilled to support this event as well. I would love to dive in a minute. As I said, we're going to be talking about this concept of the art of persuasion, storytelling's impact on modern marketing. And I think that storytelling word is something that we're really going to kind of dig deep on. It's what we talked a lot on the prep call about. And I think what's interesting is you all sort of represent a real mosaic of the industry. You come from very different vantage points, and you have a unique lens on this topic and how AI is really upending and changing it in very dramatic ways, or is it? So to start, I'd like for you to each introduce yourselves, and again, share who you are, what you do, but also answer that question in your intro around sort of what's your unique lens, what's your unique vantage point on the topic of storytelling in modern marketing. So Linda?
So great to be here with this incredible group and certainly with Jenny. Linda Boff, I am CEO of an agency called Said Differently. And for quite a long time, and I think this earned me the right on the panel, I was global CMO of GE. So I love storytelling. I just love it. I think the art of telling a great story and extracting what is unique about a brand, be it a sports brand or a car brand or a bar of soap, or in my case, a manufacturing brand, is a great privilege. I think to be a storyteller is to be an excavator and to find that essence and to find a great way to tell it. So I'll leave it there and we'll talk more.
Love that. Gail.
I'm Gail Troberman. I was a CCO at Microsoft. We told a lot of hard stories back there. And I most recently was CMO at iHeartMedia. So I think my unique vantage point been at iHeart for about 10 years. My unique vantage point is thinking a lot about storytelling in audio, which is so much of how humans tell stories, right? I always say, like, I've never gone to a restaurant because I've seen a picture of a bowl of pasta. Ever. But I've gone to a million restaurants because Linda said, oh my God, I had the best pasta last night. It had this and that, and it was so good, and it's this great little restaurant, and it had this right vibe, right? And so when you think about storytelling, I think sometimes we get obsessed with the visuals, and if you start with just telling stories like people do, you can have a lot more impact. So, have your own mic.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Tammy Hinault, CMO at the NBA. Storytelling is the core of what we do. Day in, day out, we basically have the best reality unscripted programming on television, I'd say, that the scripts write themselves. And what our fans crave is all the details about our players, like what they're doing, what they're watching, where they're eating, what their business ventures are. They want to know about their families. And the more we can humanize them, right? They're some of the biggest, most recognizable people on the planet. Telling their full stories just gets our fans more engaged, and it's just critical to what we do.
Thank you. George Hammer, I lead marketing for Marriott's luxury brands. That includes 8 different brands like Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, and Addition Hotels. We're seeing a lot of success in creating stories with other brands, specifically luxury brands. Of course, we do storytelling ourselves, and of course with influencers and other channels, but we see our guests really desiring unique collaborations. And so just yesterday we announced through social a partnership with Villa Perquin, where St. Regis and Villa Perquin co-created a line that also created a better experience on property, that people got to buy something and experience something. So that storytelling that leads to a real world experience is kind of with collaboration partners is, I think, really what's working for us.
Thank you. Well, storytelling has been a very important part. I'm Keith Reinhardt, Chairman Emeritus of DDB Worldwide. Nobody knows what Chairman Emeritus means. So I can do whatever I want. I had one young cub reporter after I had been in Dubai, and I got back, and she looked at my card and she said, "How'd you get to be Chairman of the Emirates?" Which would have been a better gig, actually.
Way better perks.
Back of my business card, when we still use business cards, I had a segment of a cave drawing to remind me that stories have been important in terms of bringing people together since time began. And so that was a constant reminder. Aristotle said, I wasn't there when he said it, but that you don't persuade people with intellect, you do it with emotion. And that's what stories do. And there's science to prove this. I'll quickly tell you about Dr. Paul Zak in California. He's a neuroscientist. And he conducted several experiments, but one that I'll tell you about was two groups of people being charged with giving money to a fund to help cure cancer. And the first group was given facts, all about why you should do this, how much you should do it, and what the opportunities and the obstacles are. The second group, there was not really a word spoken. They were shown a short video of a father and his little son. They were playing together, and the son had cancer but didn't know it. And so the people were asked afterwards to give money, and the people who saw the little boy and his dad with no spoken words except the kid didn't know he had cancer far surpassed the other group in terms of giving money. So there's scientific proof. And just one quick real world story. In Argentina, we made a video for the Transplant Foundation, Kidney Transplant Foundation. And again, no spoken words, but the story was an older gentleman and his dog. And every morning he goes to the coffee shop, buys a cup of coffee, brings it home and a newspaper, sits down, starts to read the newspaper, and his dog follows him everywhere. And one morning he starts to read the newspaper and suddenly, and now he hears sounds of ambulances, and he's taken off to the hospital, and the dog is trying to follow, and they won't let the dog in the ambulance. The dog sits there outside the ambulance entrance for 2 days, and finally the doors open. The dog's ears pick up, and instead of his friend, a young woman in a wheelchair comes out. And yet the dog senses the presence of his friend. Obviously, he has donated an organ to her to expand her life. 2,700,000 views in the first week on YouTube. So the power of story and the power of emotion.
You make me cry.
Yeah, I remember that. It's incredibly powerful, the ad you're talking about. But I think, to Keith's point, let's use that as a jumping off point, because the kind of the premise here, and I think the premise that is sort of the ongoing narrative right now is that, storytelling, the segment that I have here next to talk about is storytelling in a performance-driven world, as if they're oppositional, right? So what you just described was storytelling is the thing, So I want this to feel organic. Why are we pitting these things? Do we just love stories of duality, and that you can't have storytelling, you can't have performance, performance is over here, storytelling's over here. What do we need to be doing better as an industry to make sure that we're telling the story, that storytelling is actually driving performance and growth? Metrics are something that's talked about so much. Actually, we just reported on Russell Reynolds had their latest research that came out about the fact that the CMO title is declining steadily and has done so for the last couple of years, and in its place, and this is not new news. We've heard this story round and about. Rise of Chief Revenue Officer title, rise of Chief Growth Officer title, because the thinking is that the Chief Marketing Officer title doesn't have performance metrics tied to it, right? Like as if it's not doing the same thing that a Chief Growth Officer would be doing. And that's not the topic of this conversation, but why are we still talking about this as if it's at odds? And Linda, I'll start with you just because you're right here.
I had lunch, I think it was last week, with, oh, sorry, I forgot you just can't hear me. I had lunch last week with the absolutely wonderful head of corporate public affairs for Pfizer, Sally Sussman. And for those of you who haven't read Sally's book, please go read Sally's book. And the reason I'm starting there is one of the many, many wise things Sally says in her book, and she's been a communications professional for years at Pfizer, before that at Estee, is that communications is a hard skill. It's not a soft skill. And I think having spent a very long time in corporate America, working for 3 different CEOs, and now seeing it from the other side, where I'm working with multiple different companies, I think too often brand marketing, even the word storytelling, which I'm unafraid to use, can feel soft. It's not soft. I mean, Keith's story almost reduced us to tears. We'll try to get through this panel without you making us cry. But I do think this idea that the upper part of the funnel and awareness and the stories are not as important as what you can count is a bit of where we start to go wrong. There are other places, but I'm going to let my colleagues fill in. But that would be one I would start with.
Yeah, I mean, I think your question of, is it one or the other? Are they at odds? I think they're complementary is the answer, right? Like everything from a brand side ultimately helps fuel the demand. And you have to tell the stories at the top to make people care about taking the action at the bottom. And I think, the more we can tell it as a comprehensive story, that it's complementary, that you need both, that the investment in both is ultimately what drives the performance and the revenue, I think is only going to benefit us all.
I think we have to be great storytellers internally. I mean, I spend maybe 50% of my time, rallying internally the organization behind what we believe is right for customers and the brand. And I think what's beautiful about where I work, because it's in luxury, is that as we increase brand value, we increase prices. And so we're actually able to see brand directly correlated to revenue, directly correlated to outcomes. And I just wonder how many other organizations are trying to think about how to move these things in sync versus like brand do one thing, measure it a year later, then come back and talk about prices. Maybe we just are not figured out the orchestration, but the connection and the impact is undeniable in my perspective.
So Gail, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think KPIs are killing us to that, right? They're supposed to be indicators of things that might correlate, right? And we've started treating the KPI as the goal. And we've got that many clicks or that many, and to get those, you start losing the story and you start going for the most aggressive CTAs and things. And great if they're buying or they're actually, driving a true growth outcome. But if they're clicks and views and other like soft measurement in the middle, I think they're getting in the way of how we measure the power of the story and then the real outcome, the actual booking or things. So if you can collapse that, it's great.
I think to build on George's point, it's like balancing the short-term gain from the long-term benefit of investing in the brand and the storytelling up front.
Just add one thing very quickly, which is storytelling is not just in the remit of the CMO or whatever we're going to call them these days. I think some of our very best narratives at GE were when we partnered with investor relations and our CFO and our CHRO, and we thought about the overall narrative of the company. So it goes back, I think, a little bit, George, to what you were saying. Like, I think the more we try to hold this so closely, it's like Gollum and My Precious, right? You know, I think there is room for everybody to think about what is the story of a company, of a product, of a service. So it's just something that hit me as I was listening.
Well, I was thinking about, some people say, well, but today's media, you know, we're talking about 15 seconds, 6 seconds, you can't tell stories in that. Wrong. Some of you might remember something attributed to Ernest Hemingway. I'm not sure he said it, but they said, a powerful story, how can you do that in a very short time? He said, I can do it in 6 words. For sale, baby shoes, never used. A story with emotional impact. And today we're seeing we can tell stories in 6 seconds. Right now the Skittles work. Help, somebody put crunch in my Skittles, and these are 6 seconds, and 35,000 people have gone online to create their own little help, there's crunch in my Skittles, by combining the conflicting emotions that people had. Oh, there's crunch in my, I'm feeling really terrible. I'm feeling wonderful. I'm feeling forgotten. I'm feeling loved. You know, and you go online and you do this in 6 seconds, all these stories. So you can do it. Way back, we've always known how to tell stories. Does anybody remember Burma shave signs along the road? Your grandparents would remember. No? Do you remember those? Along the highways, 6 consecutive signs to tell a story, and you couldn't wait to see the next story. They could be love stories. Let's see. Yeah, Ben met Anna, made a hit. These are consecutive signs. Neglected beard, Ben and Anna split. So, I didn't say they were good. I said they were short and they were about love. So anyway, shortness is not going to bother us in terms of storytelling.
Another great point, because I do think this concept of brevity is not a new concept. I mean, anybody else study journalism in college, school? I mean, like, fundamentally, you would write anything and you'd bring it to your professor and they would say, cut more, like use fewer words. And so the skill that they were trying to get us to learn was, how do you tell stories in the fewest words possible? So that's not a new thing. So it's almost like we can't use that as an excuse anymore, that, you know, in this digital era and everything else, that becomes like a constraint. It really isn't. And somebody else told me recently, creativity loves constraint, right? The best things come from constraint. So in that context, let's now move a bit to, yes, AI. I have it here. It's in the top of my notes. We're not going to save it to the end because it is what it is. But what's interesting to me is this concept of, I'm sure you all have either asked of somebody on your team or it's been asked of you, what's our AI strategy? As if it's a sort of siloed monolith that exists over there. Talk a little bit about, I'm gonna take a positive spin. Is AI improving your storytelling? Yes or no?
I mean, it's not a yes or no question, but in some ways, yes. Like, I think we're using AI and dabbling in a number of different aspects of it, but one of it is in terms of creating more tailored and customized creative and messaging and leveraging AI tools to create, you know, a ton of different versions that you wouldn't necessarily create or think of maybe on your own. And we are seeing those more tailored specific versions, whether it's cutting vignettes from our longer form spots into shorter form snackable content, or creating new copy lines that feel more performance driven, even if they're part of a brand campaign. So an example is recently we're in the playoffs right now, in case anybody is watching. Yes, And, our playoffs campaign was really focused around the tagline of "Don't miss a thing." It was really trying to lean into FOMO and the fact that this is going to be the pinnacle of the season, and if you're not watching, you're going to miss out. And for various segments, we used AI to create really specific, tailored copy lines. And for our avid fans, the copy line that was recommended was essentially, don't miss out on the group chat. Like, if you're an avid fan and you're going to be talking hoops with your friends day in, day out, you have to watch the playoffs to be able to be part of that conversation. And we were able to create like dozens of versions like that for various segments, from our sports betting audience to, our sneakerhead audience, et cetera, et cetera. And those versions like significantly overperform when we A/B tested it versus like our general evergreen version, right? It's regular optimization and personalization, but it's just the ability to do it at scale so easily, I think helps performance. Going back to your original question.
I want to say yes, two ways. One way is that if AI is basically the mean of what someone would answer that question in your industry, because it takes everyone else's input, I tell my team, if there's a brief or something, look at what AI would do, treat it almost like is the average, and you better be better than average, right? So think of something else, and essentially all your competitors can ask AI that, get that same response. So therefore, that's going to show up somewhere. Someone's going to take that and do it, so we shouldn't. So for big creative ideas, I look at it as it's a way for making us better, and a way for us to think about that may not be a great thing to do. And then the second thing is 87% of our social impressions actually come from guests sharing stuff on property or afterwards. And we're using AI in different pilots. One is like an AI concierge when you're at the hotel and you're at poolside. Do you need to get a drink delivered to you right away? You can talk to the concierge and it might help tell the bar, and then you get something delivered quickly, probably faster than waiting for someone to come around. That speed and delight then lead to someone taking a picture poolside saying thank you, and then leads to us the storytelling of the guests on your behalf. So I think it increases potentially your brand quality of storytelling and this guest storytelling as well. So I think it has multiple capabilities.
I'm going to remember that bar. That's a really good way to think about it, right? If AI is giving us a bar, that's pretty shitty, right? Like, how do we get better? I was going to go in a slightly different direction, though. So without a doubt, I think two things. One, AI is a tool, not an answer, and it's a tool that we should use, just the way we should use many, many other tools. And, we were comparing notes before the panel as to our favorite AI, right? I mean, it is that much in our lives on a regular basis, be it chat or Perplexity or Claude or what have you. I think it's improving marketing, which was not your question, so you can cut me off if you'd like, but because they are two different things. But part of a good story is making sure that that good story reaches the right people. And in my view, which I've been at this a little while, market research has been largely unchanged for my career in marketing. And I am excited, again, it's back to a tool, that there are now AI tools in market research that use synthetic panels that allow you to get so much further up the curve in terms of understanding what your audience wants. Now, would Melissa use them to sell a Cadillac? I don't know, but would she use them to quickly and efficiently get enough data that she can then fine-tune that data? You bet. Something like healthcare, which was an example from somebody I was speaking to recently. The healthcare process is obviously highly regulated, which we want. It means a lot of compliance. So to be able to do research and get a view as to a future drug and not have to wait the 9 months is a huge advantage. So does that make us better as marketers? You bet. And I think it makes our ability to tell stories and get them in front of the right people that much better.
Can I add a point? I was curious about whether the new technology is diminishing the importance of originality in storytelling. So I asked ChatGPT the question. And ChatGPT said, actually, when so many different advertisers are using the same technology, it tends to homogenize and lack of distinctiveness and originality. And then it playfully turned the question to me and said, what do you think? Do you think that the modern advertising lacks a certain creative spark because of the technology? And I said, it doesn't matter what I think. I'm not going to give you data that you can use for some. but what I thought was what Bill Bernbach said years ago, founder of Doyle Dane Bernbach. He said, I warn you about thinking that advertising is a science. It's too bad. It would be easier if it were, but it's an art that flourishes on innovation and withers on imitation. And I think we have to watch out for that. There was a headline or a baseline in Fast Company not long ago that said, AI will make some people smarter and some people dumber because the people who are not doing conceptual thinking will become dumber.
Gail, I want to get your view on this from the audio standpoint, specifically from the audio standpoint. Where are you seeing AI actually having an impact in the most positive ways, and also where do you think we need to be sort of keeping an eye out for what could possibly go wrong there?
What could possibly go wrong with AI? Yeah. It's a whole nother panel, much longer. I think at iHeart, and I think you said it to Tammy, Linda, I think AI is a tool and it's crazy efficient for a lot of very routine stuff that just needs to get versioned and created and adapted, right? Do I need Ryan Seacrest to sit in a studio for an hour and say, listen to On Air with Ryan Seacrest on Kiss FM LA, on Kiss FM Boston, right? There are a lot of things that are just crazy efficient with AI and working with our shows and our talent. I think the opportunity is so much bigger, right? So, I agree. I don't know that you're going to find your best campaign core idea through AI, but you're going to get through a lot of ideas fast, right? You're going to get through a lot of insights. And then the same thing that happens on a whiteboard in the olden days in a room, somebody's going to have to go, oh, that was fascinating. And if you put that with that, then we've got an idea or something to really launch a campaign. But once you have that idea, now, and this is the bane of my existence in the audio landscape, right? If people come to iHeart and they buy a radio, podcast, digital audio campaign, and then they give us 2 spots, and we air them on 860 stations in 150 US markets, and they're running on hip hop and pop and country and sports and news, and they're running in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and late night, and none of those factors about where, when, and what context they're in are being addressed. So imagine if you could take a brilliant idea and then just ask AI to help you adapt it. Hey, this is for hip hop fans. This is for pop fans. This is for sports fans. This is for the mornings in the Northeast. This is for mornings in the Southwest. This is for hot days and cold days, and. You can version if you let AI do the kind of creativity it's good at, it will take your core brilliant idea that probably humans had to finesse, but it can now make it more contextually relevant in thousands of spaces. And it can take a video idea and turn it into audio, and an audio idea and turn it into social, and so on. So I look at a lot as it's the magic for versioning and speeding things up and driving production efficiency while increasing relevance.
Keith, I want to ask you, there have been some extraordinarily iconic campaigns in this world, in our world. McDonald's has had some extraordinarily iconic campaigns. Apple. Could they have been made in an AI era?
Well, that's a very good question. I think just one McDonald's example, and this, we're going back to the mid 70s now. We were insisting to McDonald's that they should not tell people the ingredients of a Big Mac, because we had research that said it's a mystique. And if you tell people the ingredients, you're going to destroy that mystique. And McDonald's said, no, but we want to tell people the ingredients of a Big Mac. And so we started to say, okay, now what are the ingredients of a Big Mac? And it turns out one of the writers had done a trade ad that said, two all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce,
Lettuce,
cheese,
onions, pickles on a sesame seed
bun. That was that. Right, yeah. So,
Yeah, it was good.
I think it worked.
and that was 1976, and now the people are can still remember. That's another advantage of stories, by the way. People can remember and tell them. Whether AI could have put that together, I'm not sure. It's interesting to me when you mention Apple, because now Apple Intelligence is going to hit later this year, and we're going to be able to tag Apple Intelligence with OpenIA and ChatGPT, and that'll be interesting. But could AI have done some of the fabulous, legendary, iconic stuff that Apple did? The famous 1984 commercial, great storytelling. Those iTunes introductory posters, the silhouettes on those bright colors, and then on video, the dancing, involving the consumer with the best photographs taken on iTunes, iPhotos. And now, you want to cry again, remember did you see the Christmas commercial? I think it was probably only 15 seconds long, for AirPods Pro 2 that has a hearing aid device. And the story they told for Christmas, watch it, you'll cry. You saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. So I don't know if AI can do all that. We'll see.
Quick question about ownership of storytelling. So this is something we talked about before. I mean, look, frankly, this concept of who owns the story, again, not a new concept. Going back, 15 years or so, it was all crowdsourcing was sort of a hot new trend, and we were thinking about how do we actually tell stories by let the consumers own the story. All those things. Creators, athletes, agency, client, we have so many different voices in the room now. Thoughts on who owns the story, who needs to own the story, how much do we need to let the story go? I mean, the control topic.
Sure. So, as the MBA, we work with a lot of creators, and I think as a brand, you're often passing the mic to people that you don't necessarily have direct control over the messaging. But you're partnering with people that you believe is going to be aligned with your values, obviously aligned with your messaging, and hopefully just be able to deliver it and deliver that narrative and deliver that storytelling through their own lens to their own audience so that the message lands better and obviously feels more authentic. And so that's how we consider our relationships with a lot of different creators that we work with, and it's actually letting go a bit, right, of the control, but helping your message land better with the audiences you're trying to reach.
George, you talked a lot about how your customers are telling the story. You're letting your customers tell the story. Talk a little bit more about that. How you bring that to life?
Yes. So I think every brand wants to stand for something, but it's also been true. What we've stood for has always been the accumulation of what everyone else already thinks the brand is. So I don't think this really has changed much. What great companies do, I think, is make sure they have a great product or a great service that's consistent enough, so when people experience it, that brand is re-envisioned and interpreted through the customer's eyes in a certain way. So for us, we spend tons of money, time, and effort on training the people. Tons of effort and investment in architectural design and other elements that deliver that great product experience. And then with the way social algorithms go right now, a particular guest with 40 followers could end up with millions of impressions in any particular network, way more than an influencer could. So you need to be listening and looking for those and helping elevate every common guest, not just the ones you pay for. So it requires a lot more community kind of engagement. But I don't think much has changed, just the technology.
I think I'm really bothered by the fractionization of brand voice now with all the different channels and the different influencers, and the lack of integrity there for a brand voice. I go back to Apple again. They have three lenses through which they look at every product, every ad, every store, and those are simplicity, creativity, and humanity. And if it doesn't fit that, it doesn't go online, it doesn't become a product. And they're very good about that, I think, so that their brand voice, I think, is consistent and has real integrity. A lot of brands seem fragmented to me today.
I'm kind of in the Keith camp here in that I do think there's both elements. People are going to take your brand, they're going to interpret it, they're going to share it. But I think if a brand doesn't fundamentally know their essence and their story and their tone and what is on brand and what isn't on brand, how can you let it go in the world? I don't know. That DNA to me is every brand's to figure out how they're going to tell their story their way, knowing that there are ringside seats and ringside seats and ringside seats. But I do think it starts with that core nugget.
I am worried about as brands, as more micro content takes over in the world and we lose the mass kind of stance, and that potentially, and AI and other people can like reinterpret brands, and the brand's communication channels could become like some media channels or media industries where like the lack of trust goes down. Really, brands are built on trust. And so the more we hand over and we potentially lose trust, it is a risk. AI versioning things that become maybe not real or don't convey the right trust, it becomes a risk. So we have to do whatever we can to maintain that trust to make sure marketing works. Otherwise, if it ends up like politics and some of the news media at those trust levels, it's going to be very, very expensive and very not great for our industry.
I think we're coming down on time, but this is going to be a fun one. We've already referenced some historical campaigns and stories that I think have moved all of us, but I'm going to go around to each of you. What's one story or campaign that still resonates with you and why? Go ahead, Keith.
Well, I'll start with, because we were talking about Apple, and I would have to do 1984, that amazing commercial that introduced Macintosh, not only because it upset the whole tech world. I mean, it painted IBM as a blue dystopian big brother when IBM's machine was actually better. But the other thing was it inspired me to buy my first computer. And also, I was chairman of the jury of Cannes in 1984, and it made my job so easy to come up with a Grand Prix, unanimous choice of the jury for 1984. Does everybody remember that commercial? Okay. Amazing.
I guess I'll go, then I'll pass you the mic. Since you mentioned IBM and I used to work there, I'm going to give them some love. They turned it around with Smarter Planet, right? It was a brand that needed to convey it stood for something in the world, not just make something. And it's a technology company. As tech changes all the time, it needs to actually be consistent in its values and what it does. So I was very fortunate to work on that and be part of that story. And it still reminds me every day that it's not necessarily what you sell, but maybe it's your brand and the story you tell. So I'm going to give that some love. IBM Smarter Planet.
When you asked the question, I was just thinking back to what ads made me cry recently. And actually, I don't know the name of it, so someone here is going to have to shout it out if they know it. But it was I recently came across a Toyota ad. I think it was an older ad, but it was following the journey of a dad, right, and his daughter, and the relationship from infancy when he first, brought his daughter home from the hospital until, the daughter grows up, and all of the different moments in life that trails a father-daughter relationship. And I have 2 little girls, and so it definitely resonated with me. It made me cry. So I can't remember the name of the ad though. So
Motion matters.
I was thinking hard about this. I was going to do I'm a Mac, I'm a PC, but I still have too much emotional baggage around that, so I'm not going to go there to follow on Keith. I actually, I think Real Men of Genius, does everybody remember that campaign? Bud Light, right? So yeah, getting some positive shout outs. The thing that was so unique about that was it's a beer brand. We know what beer is. Like, you don't need to tell me a bunch. They just use the opportunity to this idea of a brand knowing who they are and where they show up in your life and the role they play. They were just damn funny and entertaining. And, I just Googled it this morning for this. And, that campaign ran for 10 years. Radio, TV, I'm sure it went into digital because it started in the late 90s and went through.
Aren't you going to tell them who the agency was?
Yeah, was it you guys? I honestly don't know. Yeah, see, TDB, a lot of genius work, a lot of genius.
But I want to say one other thing.
Yeah.
I want to say one other thing about that. Thank you very much for explaining it so well. Credit to the client. I mean, it's their money we're asking them to spend on a dumb idea like that. And talk about trust. They have to trust you and say, well, I don't quite understand this, but if you think it's going to work, and then it works.
It just was so entertaining. You looked forward to more of them. I think they produced something like 400 spots, right? I mean, and they weren't afraid. We get so bored with our marketing before our consumers even know it existed, right? And if you have a good idea, don't be afraid to let the agency run with it and stay with it. Don't get bored with great ideas because you can keep making them entertaining.
Linda, I'm going to make you share. Talk about master of iconic campaigns. You have to tell us what was your favorite GE campaign under your watch.
GE campaign, but
you can do that too, but you have to answer
So one of our maxims was to always show up the way a person would, not the way a really big company would, because we were the ultimate iconic, really big company. And I don't think, by and large, maybe Apple's an exception, people don't fall in love with companies. So we tried to be unbelievably human in everything we did. And it's a tie, but I'll go with my mom works at GE. So we had a young, thank you. We had a young girl. Our agency originally cast it as a boy, and I insisted it be a girl. Who you try where you can, who through this very whimsical lens talked about what her mom does at GE. She makes trains that talk to trees. They were smart trains. She makes hospitals that fit in the palm of your hand, which was a code for a small ultrasound we made. And it was beautifully filmed. Full credit to BBDO. Keith is right. It's always a partnership, and great work comes from a partnership. But it's still, if you give me a few more minutes, I will start to cry because it was so important and special and human. So that would have been my favorite. Otherwise, I would have said Dear Sophie from Google. That's probably the one I reference the most on the agency side. When we're looking for something, that is my, 1984 is pretty great, but that's my touchstone.
Mine was Fritos Go with Lunch. Anybody? I'm not kidding. I'm dating myself. But in the 70s, there was this really awesome ad. It was a bunch of Fritos Go with Lunch. And there was this little boy, and he was really bored with his sandwich until mom poured some Fritos on his plate, and it just changed his whole world. And from then on, he enjoyed his lunch, and that's my metaphor for living life. So eat some Fritos with the tough stuff in life, and it'll spice up your day. So anyway, please join me in thanking these esteemed panelists, master marketers. Thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate you.